What's up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is the co-main event deep dive for UFC 264, and we have an absolute banger. We have Stephen Thompson going against Gilbert Burns, a fight that I'm really looking forward to. A very good co-main event on a very good card. Can't wait to break it down. Me and Uncle Weezy, we broke down the main event, went really deep into that. Went like 40-something minutes. So if you guys have not yet, go check that out. And yeah, can't wait to get into this. Before we do so, if you guys can leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel if you have not yet so you don't miss out on all the content throughout the week. My full card breakdown and prediction video should be out either Sunday or Monday. But before we get into it, going to kick it to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, man, how do you feel about this matchup?
Man, I'm so fired up about this one. This is a really fun matchup to break down because it's got a real interesting stylistic touch to it, you know? Both of these guys, great mixed martial artists, but they both have careers prior to MMA being at the top level of their little business that they were in, whether it was Gilbert Burns with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Stephen Thompson with karate and kickboxing. So you got a clash of styles here. It's going to be super fun to break down. Two top fivers in one of the top divisions in the UFC. I can't wait, man. Let's go. Let's get into it.
Yes, sir. Let's do it. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this fight. Let's break it down here. And we will start with Gilbert Burns. He is 34 years old, 5'10", 71-inch reach, going against Stephen Thompson, 38 years old, 6 foot, 75-inch reach. So some things that stick out to me is going to be the age of Stephen Thompson, 38 years old, turning 39 in February. So Burns is going to be younger by 4 years there. And then also the reach advantage for Stephen Thompson is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage and a 2-inch height advantage as well for Thompson. So taking a look at the last couple fights between the two guys, Gilbert Burns, he did get knocked out by Kamaru Usman. Prior to that, he did take Woodley to decision to beat him. Prior to that, knocked out Damian Maia. He beat Gunnar Nelson by decision and then beat Alexei Koncheko by decision as well. So Burns is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We take a look at Thompson here. He did beat Jeff Neal by decision. He beat Luque by decision, lost to Anthony Pettis by knockout. We'll talk more about that. He did lose to Darren Till, and then he did beat Jorge Masvidal by decision, making him 3-2 in his last 5 fights. So I guess we'll start with the experience. Uncle Weezy, what do you got for us?
This is interesting here. You know, we see some similar numbers in the experience. Gilbert Burns, 23 professional fights. Stephen Thompson, 21. And we got a 19-4 record for Gilbert Burns. We got a 16-4-1 record for Stephen Thompson. About 80 more minutes in the cage for Thompson over his career. Even though he's got 2 less fights, he has been in the cage a lot longer. And his career is a little bit longer, too. So Burns has been a little bit more busy, but definitely Burns' fights ending a little bit quicker as we got about a 9-minute average fight time over his career for Burns and about 13.5 for Thompson, because Thompson has definitely been in some 5-round wars as well. But we've got, for the UFC, we see very similar numbers here as they both have 16 fights, and their records are almost identical. 12-4 for Burns, 11-4-1 for Thompson. We've got about 50 more minutes in the cage in the UFC for Thompson. He's spent most of his career there, as has Gilbert Burns. As we see 205 minutes of total cage time for Burns, and 180 of that has been in the UFC. And the same thing for Thompson, 282 minutes of career cage time, 232 have been in the UFC. So both of these guys have been fighting most of their careers at the highest level. And I also brought it up before that, you got Stephen Thompson with, I believe, a 57-0 professional kickboxing career prior to being in mixed martial arts. And then you got Gilbert Burns being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's a world champion. So, not only are these guys incredible UFC fighters, but they had, they were at the top notch of their business before as well. So we got the grappler here in Burns, who does have a lot of power in his hands, versus the karate style kickboxer point fighter in Stephen Thompson, who does bring a lot of power. A clash of styles I'm really looking forward to. The experience numbers fairly similar, though.
Yeah, very similar indeed. I guess the only thing that sticks out to me is going to be the cage time. Gilbert Burns typically, getting it done quicker than Thompson. Yeah, average fight time of 14 minutes and 52 seconds. That's a lot there. But yeah, pretty similar. Both the 16 UFC fights. But yeah, we'll get into the finish stats, see if something sticks out there.
Yeah, and we see that Burns is a very good finisher. In the UFC, he's got 12 wins. A third of them come by submission, a third of them come by KO, and a third of them come by decision. So he's an equal opportunity winner. He's equally likely to win in all three ways. While in his overall career, we got 42% wins by sub and 32% by knockout for almost a 75% finish rate overall. While we see Thompson, in his 11 wins, he has won 45% of them, 5 of them by knockout, 0 by sub. So he goes to decision more than he finishes in the UFC, but by a very slight margin. While we see over his career, he's got 6% of his career wins. There's 16 of them by sub and 44% by KO. So, Stephen Thompson's a knockout artist. Gilbert Burns more of an equal opportunity finisher. While we see as how they lose fights, Stephen Thompson has only been finished once in 21 fights, and it was by knockout. And we see that Gilbert Burns in 4 career losses has only been finished twice, and they were both by knockout. So, we can see that Stephen Thompson, one encouraging thing if you're on the Thompson side is that he's never been subbed. So yeah, it's kind of a quiet thing that, he's got some grappling experience. He's got great takedown defense. And he's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu, actually, which I didn't know. But so that's pretty good. It's good to know if you're on the Thompson side that he's never been submitted before. But Gilbert Burns, an elite grappler, so there's always a live possibility for a submission in the Gilbert Burns fight, especially if he hurts you first. But yeah, we see that Thompson is a KO finisher, and Gilbert Burns has been finished by KO, so definitely a knockout path to victory for Stephen Thompson with that excellent striking game of his. And Gilbert Burns, he's got many different ways to win fights, whether it's with his power, whether it's with his grappling, or just using fight IQ and going to decision like he did against Tyron Woodley. So, yeah, that's what we got for the finish numbers. Which way are you leaning on this?
Yeah, I mean, very interesting. Like you mentioned, if Burns wins, it could be by knockout, it could be by submission, even decision. But we wouldn't see Thompson winning by submission. I think if Thompson wins, it's clearly a knockout or a decision win there. You had mentioned it, Thompson, 21 fights. He's never been submitted. I think that's very important to note. You also mentioned that he is a black belt on BJJ, which we do not get to see it, often at all, because he really doesn't need to take it there. And then as far as Burns has been knocked out twice, of course, never been submitted. So, yeah, we'll take a look at the odds a little bit later. But yeah, interesting finish stats there. I think both guys are capable of finishing in this matchup. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I think, Burns is going to need a finish in this matchup. And we'll talk more in a little bit about why. But as far as, both guys, I do think in this fight in particular, both guys are indeed live for a finish.
Absolutely. These guys are so good. I mean, they're top 5 for a reason. So, they both are really good at what they do. And so let's go into the striking statistics where we can see Stephen Thompson. This is where he wants the fight to be. He is most comfortable when he's striking, and you'll see why in the stats. Gilbert Burns, 3.22 significant strikes landed per minute out of 7.03 attempted for a 45.77% striking accuracy. And we see that Thompson is landing 4.24 out of 9.65 for about a 44% striking accuracy. So Thompson, the busier offensive striker, just a little bit less accurate than Burns. And when we look at the power numbers, we see that Gilbert Burns is landing a knockdown on about 0.7% of his significant strikes landed, while for Stephen Thompson, it's at 1%. So Stephen Thompson is averaging about twice as many knockdowns per 15 minutes at 0.65 knockdowns per 15 minutes in comparison to Burns, who's 0.33. And we have to keep in mind that about 2/3 of Gilbert Burns' career was fought at 155, not at 170. So we do know that Thompson has got a little more of that 170 power than Burns does. But they both have power in their hands, and they both have landed knockdowns in the UFC. So, anything can happen. If we look at the defensive numbers, we see that Gilbert Burns is absorbing 3.04 significant strikes per minute out of 6.74 attempted. He's showing a 55% striking defense, which is nice. And we see that Stephen Thompson is landing 2.8 or having 2.8 landed against him out of 6.79 per minute. He's showing about a 59% striking defense. And if we look at the knockdowns per significant strikes absorbed percentages, we see that Gilbert Burns is at 1.1%. So he's been being knocked down on over 1% of the significant strikes landed against him. While for Stephen Thompson, it's 0.77%, so almost 1% for Stephen Thompson. We see that the knockdowns absorbed per 15 minutes is at 0.5 for Burns and 0.32 for Thompson. So the offensive and defensive power numbers are a little bit better for Thompson on each side. He's a little bit more likely to knock down his opponent, and he's a little bit less likely than Burns to be knocked down. And we got to remember that some of those knockdowns that Burns has absorbed were at 155 against smaller strikers. But definitely I see a power advantage here for Stephen Thompson. And if we look at the significant strike difference, we see that 3.22 minus 3.04 is 0.18. So he's got a 0.18 positive differential, does Burns, while the differential for Stephen Thompson is at 1.44. So he's out ratioing his opponents. It's a mark of how skillful of a striker Thompson is. You know, he's not only hitting his opponents more than Burns, but he's less likely to get hit. And that is a function of that karate style where he controls range so well that he can hit you when you can't hit him. And it's served him very well throughout his UFC career. And, you know, my read on this fight is that as long as this thing is standing, even though Burns has a puncher's chance and he does have power in his hands and he has shown that he can land, if this fight stays striking the entire time, there's no way Gilbert Burns is out striking Stephen Thompson. It would take close to a miracle for him to win a striking battle against this guy. What are you seeing in these striking statistics that's standing out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Burns, if it does stay standing the whole time, I think Burns will need to hurt Thompson, and that's definitely easier said than done. I know Thompson got knocked out by Pettis, kind of a fluke, his only knockout loss out of nowhere in a fight that he was winning. But this guy Thompson, he has a very good chin, a very, very good chin. Very durable. He has been hurt, but his recoverability is very good. And for Burns to hurt Thompson, he's going to need to get on the inside. And that's going to be very, very hard, especially considering, like you said, that karate style of Thompson. His range management is some of the best you'll see in the UFC. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage as well. He's going to be the much bigger fighter in this fight. So I think it's going to be very, very tough for Gilbert Burns to get on the inside and touch Thompson. He may hit him, a few times clean, but I do have, confidence in the chin of Thompson. On the other side, Burns is going to get hit, and he's going to get hit a lot. I do have some concerns about the chin of Gilbert Burns. Like you mentioned, he has been knocked down in 1% of the strikes landed against him. He does slow down as the fight goes on. And, we remember in the Woodley fight where we thought, hey, Gilbert Burns, his cardio, he's definitely improving it. I think he has. But in that Woodley fight, Woodley was, not pushing a pace. Burns was fighting at his own pace. And then we saw in the next fight against Kamaru Usman where, Usman started pushing the pace. So we saw Burns slow down bad after that first round. And I can kind of see the same thing here, especially, and we'll get to in a little bit, with the wrestling and the takedown attempts of Burns. It's going to be exhausting if Burns can not get this fight down to the mat. But we'll talk more about that. But yeah, as far as the striking stats, man, I mean, it's it tells a story. It's Thompson all day on the feet. You watch the tape, it's Thompson all day on the feet. I think Burns, to have success, he's going to have to hurt Thompson, which is going to be very hard to do. He's going to have to, close the range, get on the inside and hurt him, which is going to be very tough in my opinion. Or B, he's going to have to, take Thompson down, use the wrestling, use the grappling, get it on the mat. But yeah, if it stays standing for 15 minutes, I think, Burns probably gets knocked out at some point, but it's going to be an absolute massacre on the feet, especially with how good Thompson's been looking. And it's crazy. Like, he's been looking, this is the best Thompson's ever looked. This is the best he's ever looked. And he's 38 years old. It's just crazy to say out loud. The guy's 30 years old, and he's going out there and putting on, masterclass performances against, Jeff Neal. It landed of 171 to 85. It wasn't even close. And then a beautiful performance against a very tough Vicente Luque, and he actually hurt Luque like 3 times in that fight. And, Luque's never been knocked out, I don't believe, in his career, but, Thompson was very, very close to knocking him out a couple times. I remember, I think it was like the 3rd round where Thompson was teeing off on him, and the ref was looking very, very close, debating on whether to stop it or not. And, Thompson's 30 years old. It's just crazy to think about. I do think we will see some regression coming soon because, we got to. But, this is the best we've seen Stephen Thompson. He's sitting down more on his punches. It looks like he's hitting harder. And although he has not got a knockout in his last couple fights, Vicente Luque, it's impossible to knock that dude out. And as far as, Neal, it's hard to knock him out as well. So I think Burns has the lesser chin out of like a Neal or a Luque or a Till or a Masvidal, So I do think that a knockout would be live in this fight for Thompson if Thompson is indeed able to keep it standing. But with that said, let's get into the takedown stats here. I'm really curious to see the grappling stats on this one.
Yeah, and this is we just went over those striking stats, and another thing to look at: 9.65 strikes attempted per minute by Thompson, only 7.03 by Burns, and Thompson 9.65 that he attempts. His opponents are only attempting 6.79. So that, and it's not like he's dominating them on the ground. So that shows what kind of a pace this guy pushes, so he's going to continue to do that. So in order for Burns to be successful, he's got to get this fight to the ground. And we got to look at Burns' takedown offense and, how likely he is to be able to get the fight to the ground. So in Gilbert Burns' 16 UFC fights, we have 70 takedown attempts. So if you're on the Burns side, that's something you really want to see, because he's offering about 4.5 takedown attempts per fight, and he's gotten 25 of them for a fairly, 35.7% isn't awful. He's getting 2.08 takedowns per 15 minutes. So Gilbert Burns will commit to the wrestling, and he will try to get those takedowns. And this is not a 5-round fight. It's only a 3-round fight. So he can continue to try to work for takedowns in this fight, even if he isn't successful at first, because the likelihood that he can win 1 or 2 rounds with his wrestling might be his best chance in this fight. We do see that he controls his opponents 25.78% of the time. That's pretty good, because you see that Stephen Thompson is only being controlled 9.57% of the time. So Stephen Thompson is not used to being controlled in his UFC career. So if Burns can find a way to do that, that will make Thompson uncomfortable, and it'll give Burns a much better chance to win the fight. So let's look at Thompson. Offensive grappling, we don't see much out of it from him. 16 fights, only 11 takedown attempts. So, he's attempts less than 1 takedown attempt per fight, but he's gotten 5 of them for 45%. Not bad. He only averages 0.32 takedowns per 15 minutes and 0 submission attempts. He only gets 7.41% control time, but he only yields 9.57. So he's not getting out controlled, even though he's not using his offensive wrestling very much, which is encouraging if you're on the Thompson side. Gilbert Burns' takedown defense is at 50%. It's not very good, but when we see really high-level jiu-jitsu guys, they don't really have particularly great takedown defense, because they're so comfortable on the ground. Sometimes you're doing them a favor if you try to take them down. Now, I don't think Stephen Thompson is going to be doing Gilbert Burns any favors and trying to take him down in this fight, so I don't think we have to worry about that. So let's just go to the Stephen Thompson takedown defense. Gilbert Burns, 25 of 70 for 35% takedown offense for 2.08 per 15 minutes. Stephen Thompson has successfully defended 25 of 32 takedown attempts against him at 78%. Very good. He only is allowing 0.45 takedown attempts per 15 minutes and 0.19 submission attempts per 15 minutes. But let's dig just a little bit deeper here. 32 takedown attempts have been attempted against him in 16 fights. And this is a striking specialist. Now, I find that very interesting. When we were breaking down some of these other fights, like on Stat Diggers, like for instance, last week when we were breaking down Nchekwu against Marquez, we saw that in Nchekwu's a brief 5-fight career in the UFC, he was facing something like 8 takedown attempts per fight. And it's because people are like, oh, I don't want to box with somebody who's got an 83-inch reach and hits like a truck, so I'm just going to try to take this guy down. Well, we're not really seeing Thompson people aren't even trying to take this guy down. 16 fights, only 32 attempts. And I know he's got good takedown defense, and I know he manages distance really well, and he moves really well. So maybe some people just don't even try to take him down because they think it might be a fool's errand to do so. Johnny Hendricks attempted 1 takedown against Thompson. Thompson posted up, got right back up and then knocked him out. If Johnny Hendricks can't take him down, maybe that's the reason we're not seeing a lot of takedown attempts against Thompson. But I believe that Burns' path to victory is to try to make Thompson uncomfortable, and I don't think he's capable of doing it in the striking realm. I think he's got to clinch up with him, and I think he's got to try to get the fight to the ground, use his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and wrestling in order to do so. But you can't be too encouraged when you see 78% takedown defense and you see, a striker of Thompson's caliber. People aren't even trying to take him down. So if Gilbert Burns tries early and gets frustrated, this could be a short night for him. I'd like to see Burns try for as many takedowns as possible. If I wanted to bet on Burns, I'd be wanting this guy to constantly grapple. It's only a 3-round fight, so he can do it without compromising his gas tank too much as long as he's training for it. But somebody's got to try to make Thompson uncomfortable with the grappling, and nobody's done it. The last 4 fights, Stephen Thompson has faced 0 takedown attempts. That's crazy. I don't think that's going to be the case in this one.
Yeah, he's definitely going to face some for sure. But yeah, you mentioned a lot of great points, and I think the stats on these grappling stats are probably the most fascinating things of the fight, man. Fun fact: Stephen Thompson has only been taken down by 2 different fighters. The first one was Matt Brown back in 2012. Brown did take him down 5 times. Remind you, that was 9 years ago. And then the other fighter that took him down was Tyron Woodley, a very, very good wrestler that never uses wrestling, but he was able to get Thompson down. And you mentioned the Hendricks fight, which Hendricks back in the day, one of the best wrestlers in the division. I think he had like close to a 50% takedown accuracy, averaging nearly 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. And in that fight, Hendricks, tried to take him down right away. And Thompson's takedown defense looked so good. He was able to stuff the takedown. And after that, Hendricks didn't even bother to try to take him down again because he knew that he's probably not getting down Thompson. And like you mentioned, Thompson did knock him out. But yeah, Burns is definitely going to have to get on the inside, which is easier said than done. And, Thompson's takedown defense is very good. His get-up game is very good as well. So there's just a lot of things going against Burns here. A, he has to close the distance, which is very hard. B, he has to take down Thompson, which is very, very hard. And C, if he takes him down, he has to hold him down, which is very, very hard as well. And he's going to be the bigger fighter by a decent margin, 2 inches of height, 4 inches of reach, much bigger. Like you said, Thompson's been fighting at 170, his whole career. Burns fighting a lot of his career at 55. So just a lot of things going against Burns. But, Burns is going to have to get this fight down on the mat or he's going to be in serious trouble. A fight I did want to bring up, and it kind of reminds me of this fight in a way. I know they're, 2 different styles, but, Dan Hooker, somebody that's very long, somebody that's very rangy. And it just turns out that Dan Hooker actually has the same height and reach as Wonderboy. And this was at a different weight class as well. But Burns really, really struggled in that fight against Hooker to get on the inside. You'd see him, rush in to close the distance. He'd leave his hands down and Hooker would just, piece him apart. And Hooker actually knocked him down twice in that fight. And Hooker knocked him out. It just looked like Burns was very, uncomfortable closing all that distance, closing, that reach and trying to get on the inside. Very uncomfortable looking. And remind you, that was, a different weight class. That was at 55, but still, it was, 3 years ago, but still just wasn't a good look to me, especially in this matchup. So, it's with all the things going against Burns, closing the distance, which is hard to do, taking down Thompson, which is hard to do, holding him down, which is hard to do. And it's not like Thompson's like a fish out of water on the mat. Like you said, he's a black belt himself. Of course, you got to absolutely favor the jiu-jitsu of Gilbert Burns. It's just, I really find it hard to see him, taking down Thompson. Maybe he does get a takedown or 2 because Burns, his wrestling's solid. Him taking down Woodley, although it's, probably a washed Woodley at this point, took him down 2 times. That really impressed me because Woodley has some of the best takedown defense in the division. That impressed me. So I wouldn't be shocked if he did take down Thompson. It's just going to be, can he hold him down? And something we bring up a lot. We've been talking about it a lot on Stat Diggers. And when you don't get those takedowns, when you try to get them and you're unsuccessful, it really hurts your gas tank. We've seen it in the Zalal fight where Zalal attempted like 17 takedowns. He got 2. Zalal, somebody that, typically has very, very good cardio. He had a full camp in that fight. Zalal was gassing out. And there's like multiple examples of this, going for a takedown and not getting it is going to destroy your gas tank, especially with Burns, who, like I said, I don't think his gas tank's all that good. I do think it's improved, But if he does go in there, and if Thompson's able to stuff these takedowns, if he does get taken down and gets right back up, that's going to be very frustrating for Burns. That's going to hurt his gas tank. And on the feet, Thompson's going to pick him apart. I don't even think it's close on the feet outside of Burns landing a bomb, which again, don't think all that's likely. So, I think the grappling stats on this fight are very, very interesting. Thompson, he doesn't face many takedowns. He definitely will face some here. It's just, I find it hard to see, Burns being able to close the distance and have success taking him down. And if he does take him down, I find it even harder to see him holding it down. But maybe he does. Maybe he can, win that first round based off of getting takedowns, control time, which I think it's really hard to do. It's just in that second round, that third round, how is Burns' gas tank going to look if he does come in here with a wrestling heavy game plan? If Thompson does, stuff a takedown or two, if Thompson does work his way up, how is Burns going to look as the fight goes on?
Yeah, wrestling is so exhausting. I wrestled a little bit growing up, and I hated it. Man, it is such a hard sport. It is absolutely exhausting. And even the best wrestlers, guys like Johnny Hendricks that win national championships in college, some of these Olympic wrestlers, their matches are, 7-8 minutes long. A mixed martial arts fight is 15. So these guys are used to emptying the tank in 7 or 8 minutes. Well, you don't get to do that in an MMA fight. You have to, so if you continually try to wrestle, you're going to run out of the gas before 15 minutes. Anybody will. Nobody's that well conditioned. The ones that are just anomalies, the guys like Covington and, George St. Pierre and these guys, they could wrestle for so many rounds and never get tired, but everybody else has a gas tank that they have to worry about. Human mortals have a gas tank that they need to worry about. So Burns, his path to victory is going to be wrestling. And if you look at the strength of schedule, you do see, one of the things that's not in the strength of schedule stats is that Burns was fighting 2/3 of his career at 155. So while you see Stephen Thompson with that 1.7 ratio and 13.5 total fights on the overall strength of schedule, you got to remember that that's fighting the top level of the UFC's welterweight division since he's been here. While Burns was fighting at 155 for 2/3 of his, about 10 of his fights took place at 155, while 6 have taken place at 170. But both these guys with very impressive ratios and total fights. Burns the better ratio at 1.98. Thompson fighting the more experienced overall competition at 13.5 total fights. When you see the wins, Thompson's wins are more impressive at 2.02 ratio compared to 1.68 for Burns. And he's fighting the more experienced brand of competition with an average record of 8-4, while the average record of the Burns opponent that he's beating is 5.75 and about 3.5. And then if we look at the losses, we see that Gilbert Burns, the ratio of his losses are 3.09. So he's only losing to top-notch competition, average record of 8.5 and 2.75. It's a little bit skewed because he did lose to Kamaru Usman, who I believe is 13-0 in the UFC. So, but we do see that Stephen Thompson has lost to average records of 9.5 and 7.5 with 17 total fights. So actually kind of a low ratio. Actually, it would appear that Thompson is losing to worse competition than he's beating, which is kind of strange. But, we'd have to go back into the advanced stats in order to kind of take a look and see, what these guys are doing. And the losses for Stephen Thompson are Anthony Pettis, 11-9, Darren Till, 6-3, Tyron Woodley, 9-6, and Matt Brown, 16-12. So, he hasn't lost to the top-notch competition, but, some of the names on his scalp are Robert Whitaker, Patrick Cote, Jake Ellenberger, Johnny Hendricks, former champion, Rory McDonald, Jorge Masvidal, Luque, Neal. So he's beaten some studs, And then if we go down to his opponent here, we'll see some of the losses on his record. Kamaru, 13-0, Dan Hooker, 10-6, Michel Prazeres, 10-4, Rashid Magomedov, 5-1. So he's losing to the top-notch competition. The worst record that he's lost to is Dan Hooker at 10-6. And, and Hooker's obviously at the highest level of the lightweight division right now. While the victories, Tyron Woodley. So he's beaten Tyron Woodley, even though Stephen Thompson has lost to him once in draw. The other one was a draw. But obviously, Stephen Thompson was fighting championship Tyron Woodley. Burns was fighting 2020 version of Tyron Woodley, much different. Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson, Alexei Kunchenko, Mike Davis, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Dan Moret, Jason Sago, Sajeski, Alex Cowboy Oliveira, Giagos, and Andre Stahl are the names that are on Gilbert Burns' resume. So because Thompson has been fighting the 170-pound competition consistently, and in my opinion has fought just slightly better brand of competition, like if you were to throw out the Usman fight, I think you would see that the competition that our guy Burns was fighting was not on the level of what Wonderboy was fighting for throughout their respective careers. Which way are you leaning on the strength of schedule here?
Yeah, I mean, not really any lean for me. I think they both, fought some really good competition, especially Burns as of late. Usman, Woodley, Maia, old Maia, but still a good win. Beat Gunnar Nelson, Kunchenko. Yeah, these are good wins. And then you have Thompson, who's been fighting, the best of the best for a while now. I mean, go all the way back to 2016, the championship fight against Woodley, in the fight where he did get a draw, lost to Woodley. And remember, this was the good Woodley back in 2016, 2017. Jorge Masvidal, Darren Till, Pettis, which was a fluke, by the way, and then Luque, Neal. And man, he's just been looking so good. He's been looking so good. Like I said, 38 years old. This is the best that we've ever seen Stephen Thompson. Something crazy. I went back and looked, and Thompson threw 428 strikes in that 5-round fight against Neal. Like, that is some crazy output. And then the 3-round fight against Luque prior to that, 242 strikes attempted. So again, like, if this stays on the feet, Burns is going to have a hard time here. But yeah, very curious to take a look at the betting line here. And me personally, I'll kind of throw out here, I do have a bet on Thompson. I got him at minus 142 a couple days ago. Looks like a lot of money's coming in on him. We now have him at minus 175. Bet online looks like FanDuel minus 166. I don't know where the line's going to go. I mean, Burns is somebody that, a lot of people really like this guy. He's very big on social media. He's somebody that's very active. People really do like active fighters, and somebody that seems to have a lot of hype on him, or at least did, prior to, the Kamaru Usman fight. After that, looks like Burns did lose a little bit of steam, but still people really like this guy. So curious to see where the line goes as the fight week goes on. But yeah, right now it looks like a lot of money is coming in on the Stephen Thompson side. So people kind of seeing what we're seeing. As far as like the fight doesn't go to decision, this is where I think it gets really interesting. So FanDuel has the fight does not go to decision minus 108. Bet online minus 115. I think that's sneaky. I think a lot of people are thinking that Thompson probably cruises to a decision, but I just don't know if this stays standing. If Burns is going to be able to survive 3 rounds, he's going to get hit. He's going to get hit a ton. And we've seen Thompson, he's really sitting down on his shots lately. And if you go back and watch the Luque fight, I have, I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if Gilbert Burns was able to take the same shots that Vicente Luque took. Vicente Luque, he's not human. His chin is not human. Vicente Luque, I don't think he's ever going to get knocked out. But Burns, he has been knocked out, and he's going to get hit hard in this fight. On the flip side, if Burns wins, hey, it's probably a finish. It probably means that he was able to close the distance. He was able to get Thompson down. Maybe he did find a submission, or maybe he did clip Thompson, submit him on the ground, maybe knocked him out cold. All those are likely possibilities for Burns. It's really hard for me personally to see Burns winning a decision. So, although I do like Thompson, I do like the Thompson money line, I think the under or the fight doesn't go to decision is something to at least consider, because, man, I can see a finish on either side here. Do you have any leans on the fight doesn't go or the fight goes to decision?
I was saying that I kind of like the Stephen Thompson by KO line at plus 310. And, but I also was saying that, Gilbert Burns can finish anybody, he does have power in his hands. And and if he gets it down to the ground, this is a guy who can finish anybody with his ground game. And I don't think that Burns is going to be ready for Stephen Thompson on the feet. So the way I kind of see this playing out is Gilbert Burns having to sell out for takedowns for the first 8 to 10 minutes of the fight. If that doesn't work and he doesn't finish it, and Stephen Thompson continues to show that great takedown defense, and even when he is taken down, that great get-up game that we've seen out of him over and over again in his career, he's going to knock him out. Because like you just mentioned, that Luque fight, Vicente Luque is the literal zombie. Somebody removed his brain, some years ago, and he can still fight at the highest levels, but he is absolutely impossible to knock out. The shots that he was eating, it is unbelievable that he absorbed all that, and anybody else would have been knocked out by it. And Gilbert Burns is one of those people included in anybody else. So I could see Thompson finishing this fight inside the distance. I could see Burns maybe getting it down to the ground if he really sells out, and potentially, really putting it on Thompson on the ground and potentially getting a finish there. So I do like that. I think, if you're kind of on the fence, I think the violence bet works here because, it covers both sides. It covers that, Burns' wrestling doesn't work out. He gasses out, and then Thompson just puts it on him with that trademark volume and power that he's been showing lately. Or, the fact that Stephen Thompson has not seen a takedown attempt in 4 fights, makes him not necessarily ready for a grappling heavy game plan that Burns might catch him by surprise. And, we could see him get finished. So I do like the under. I'm definitely leaning Thompson here, but I kind of want to see where this line goes because I liked it at 150, minus 150, but now at minus 166, I don't know. I do like Thompson quite a bit here. I just don't know if I want to pay up that much for him. I hate missing out on line movement, and I have missed out on this one a little bit. So,
yeah, I mean, like you said, there's other ways to potentially play it. I personally still think there's value on the line. But yeah, like the KO prop plus 310, that's not a terrible way to look. And yeah, something I did want to bring back up in the striking stats is, yeah, Burns has been knocked down on 1% of the strikes landed. You got to think that Thompson's going to, land a ton of volume. If this does go, later into the fight, clearly probably over 100 strikes are going to land in this fight. So I think there's a very good chance that Thompson does find the finish on Burns. I think it's going to be more of a late finish after Burns, tires out of trying to grapple and all that. But yeah, me as well, I'm going with Thompson. I think this is a great stylistic matchup for Thompson. Not sure where the line's going to go. Like I said, Burns, people really like the guy. I can see people, betting on him. But yeah, it looks like a lot of money is coming in on the Thompson side there. But yeah, I'll take Thompson as well. I think he's going to stuff the takedowns. I think it's going to be very hard for Burns to, close the distance. I think it's going to look something like that Dan Hooker fight where, Burns would rush in with his hands down and just get clipped. I mean, that's what Thompson wants. Thompson wants you to rush in on him with your hands down because he's a sniper. He's going to snipe you. He's going to hit Burns. He's going to hit him hard. And I do think that Burns is going to go down. But with that said, Burns is always live for a finish. The guy's very dangerous. He hits hard. He's a legit black belt in BJJ. So if he does get it down to the mat, he's live for a sub. And even on the feet, although it's going to be hard for him to get on the inside, if he does hit Wonder Boy with some clean shots, he's very live for a knockout as well. So for me, I'm going to take Thompson to win. I'm going to take him to win by KO. I already bet that the money line at minus 142. And then might be looking at the fight doesn't go to decision as well. Even that, I think people are thinking that this fight's going to more than likely go the distance. Look like there is some money coming in on the over. So I'm going to sit back on that. But yeah, guys, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you can leave a like on the video, it does go a long, long way. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram, DFS by the numbers. I have 2 bets already. Just talked about the first one, Wonderboy Thompson. Full card breakdown video coming out Sunday or Monday, hopefully Sunday, but it could be Monday as well. And I'm going to kick it to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, tell them where they can find you and tell them about your new Twitter as well.
First, I just want to throw one more thing out there. If you do believe that Thompson weathers that early storm from Burns and Burns tries to stick to him and then it just falls apart like a Chinese motorcycle late, maybe Stephen Thompson to win in round 3 plus 1,200. Okay. Not a bad look there. I might be getting on that. I do like the fight doesn't go to decision. And I just wanted to mention that, Kamaru Usman is a great wrestler, but for Burns to be jabbed up the way that Usman jabbed him up, I really see Thompson, if this fight stays standing, just really doing the same thing, maybe even worse. So, yeah, I'm going with Thompson to win this fight. You can find me on YouTube at Uncle Weezy. I got a channel there where I do my Balls Deep breakdown franchise. I will have a Nico Price, Michelle Pereira breakdown coming out probably tomorrow morning. And you can find me on Twitter at MMA Weezy. The first M in MMA is capitalized and the W in Weezy is capitalized. I'm new there. I'm looking forward to start tweeting and promoting my channel there, and I can't wait to interact with all you guys on my YouTube channel and my Twitter channel. Brady, thanks for having me on once again. It was a pleasure chopping it up with you.
No problem, man. As always. So we're going to go live on Sunday for Stat Diggers on Pub Sports Radio, going live at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to do basically what we did here, more in a condensed version, going all 12 fights, I think, are on the card now after we lost O'Malley. Which, by the way, hopefully they get a replacement for that fight. I really want O'Malley on the card. But yeah, guys, go check out the main event breakdown and prediction. We went balls deep into that as well. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, if you have not seen that yet. But yeah, talk to you guys soon. Good luck for UFC 264, and can't wait to make some money, guys. See you.